Hello, I'm Bernard Keevy. Today I'm going to explain to you how, if you develop what's called a market dominating position, it means that you won't be competing on price. It means that you'll be able to charge higher prices than some of your competitors and make more profits and start to dominate your market, which is why it's called a market dominating position. Now, a market dominating position is made up of two elements. The first one you've probably heard of. It's called a unique selling point, or sometimes it's referred to as a unique perceived benefit, which I think is a more accurate description, to be honest. And the way you develop one of these is always related to having an ideal customer, and that's what people miss, because you can't have a unique selling point unless it actually relates to something that your ideal customer feels is important to them in order for them to buy. So the first thing to do then is to identify who your ideal customer is. Now, the first thing is that often your ideal customer is an existing customer rather than a new customer, because it's 5 to 8 times cheaper to sell to an existing customer. But beyond that, what we're looking at here is two things. One is demographics. Now, what we mean by demographics is age, gender, where they live, how much they earn, what sort of cars they drive, what sort of houses they live in, etc. And that's all sort of data that's, obvious to evaluate. But the other thing that's important is what's called psychographics. And psychographics is all about how do they think. And the reason that's important is because there are things called hot buttons, which are their motivations to buy. Now, generally, a hot button, 70% of the time, is an issue, problem, concern that they've got, which they haven't got a solution to. Sometimes 30% of the time it'll be they want something because it's it'll give them pleasure, it's something they positively want. But often, more often than not, it's a negative. It's as I say, it's an issue, problem or concern, and what they're looking for is a solution. Now, if you have a target market, niche market, an ideal customer, the more closely you define this person here, the more you can position yourself as an expert or a specialist. And the thing is, with human nature, humans like to buy from the expert or the specialist. They just assume you'll be better because you're an expert or specialist in that particular market. So if you specialise in dealing with accountants or insurance brokers or people who have children at private school or whatever, you'll be seen as a specialist, and therefore those people, that target market, will buy from you. Now, coming over to here, your market dominating position means that you have to innovate your business to give these people here more of what they're looking for. In other words, a better solution to their hot button. And you can do that through things like innovating your business. So you maybe add extra features to your product, extra benefits, extra service standards which you specify. So you could actually specify in writing what your service standard is. The others aren't doing that. You could offer extra safety or security if it's that sort of product. You could offer better guarantees. The more comprehensive your guarantee, the better. So, the less risk there is involved in dealing with you, the more likely people are to buy from you. The more they trust you, so that's things like testimonials and social proof. And also, even if none of these things set you aside from your nearest competitor or competitors, if you market yourself better, that in itself can do the job. So a classic example in marketing literature is Schlitz beer in America. And basically Schlitz beer were way behind the leading brands until a marketing agency took them on. And the marketing agency said, well, how do you make this beer? And they started to describe the process, how they use ice cold crystal clear water, this special brand of hops, these stainless steel vats, and how they do this, that and the other. And basically the whole process sounds very impressive. Now, the thing is, it's the same as everyone else does, and the company said, we don't market it because it's what everyone else does. But the marketing agency says, yes, but do they tell people that's what they do? And the answer was no. So Schlitz beer started marketing on the basis of exactly how they do things and describing it in detail. And that was enough to set them aside, because people assume that if you take the trouble to explain in detail how good your product or service is, and the others aren't taking the same time and trouble, then your product or service must be better. So To summarise, to have a market dominating position, which means then you'll gradually become the dominant player in your market, you need to identify your ideal customer. You need to identify their hot buttons, which is generally an issue, problem or concern that they want a solution to. And then you need to innovate your product or offering to give them that solution better than anyone else does. And you also need to explain more fully than the others do how you are providing this better solution. And if you do those two things, you end up with your market dominating position, and guess what? You dominate your market. Now, if you thought that was interesting, if you go to www.bernardkeevy.com, there are plenty of free resources on that site which will help you understand some of this a lot better. And also there's what I call the 10 to 50k challenge, which is you can register for a 45-minute screen share interview by the phone. And what we'll do is we'll go through a process where I guarantee to find you at least an extra £10,000 to £50,000 or dollars worth of profit without you having to spend an extra penny on sales or marketing. So I hope you found that interesting. Thank you very much for your attention.